The next day, John was there again with 2 of his disciples. When he saw Jesus passing by, he said, "Look, the Lamb of God." When the 2 disciples heard him say this, they followed Jesus. Turning around, Jesus saw them following and asked, "What do you want?" They said, "Rabbi, where are you staying?" "Come," he replied, "and you will see." So they went and saw where he was staying, and they spent that day with him. Over the past 2 to 3 years, I have found my head turned and my heart caught by the transformative glimpse of God I have experienced through Christian community. Like the 2 disciples, I have felt this glimpse feed a deeper curiosity, prompting me to follow and ultimately be invited to come and see. To this end, this 2023, I am embarking on a 6-month journey to dwell with various Christian communities. On the way, I'll be sharing interviews with community members, founders, and leaders to learn more about the blessings, challenges, and wisdom these dwelling places of God hold. In doing so, I hope to inform how it is we might nurture people and communities to be transformative manifestations of God, offering a glimpse of the divine and inviting people to come and see God's loving dwelling place.
So I'm Phil, and we have a house that we look after in London, and what is my story? Closed questions better than open questions. We have a house. There's 10 people, and we try to run it as an ordinary, extended, hospitable household that operates on a relatively straightforward market rent basis to take lodgers, that is compatible with life in London, but because of the affordances of the permanence and the stability of it, it can push certain generosities of hospitality and economies of scale and so forth. So I don't know. Maybe we're being under ambitious with what we're stewarding, but I think primarily trying to be ordinary.
Yeah, because it's a wonderful 3-4 story house. And would you mind sharing the story of how it came to be a community?
Yeah. So I guess what it is better explained in what it has been and how it came to be, because it wasn't like we drew up some master plan and this is what we came up with. In the 80s, Tony, who was a remarkable man, a bachelor all his life, and one with a sense of call to kind of be an evangelist and do discipleship and I don't know, get young men on the straight and narrow. I think he felt called to London in the 70s and was involved with the Navigators, who had a great line in that time of like quite high energy community houses. Like ostensibly it seems like student houses, but I don't know, somehow in like the price point and the energy of forms of Christianity and the housing market, I don't know, seem to like, I keep meeting people, oh yeah, my uncle's friend of something like lived in a nav house, and he was kind of in that milieu, and he just sort of outlasted them, and I think he was...
So Navigate was like student Christian housing?
Yeah. So the Navs, Dawson Trotman, following Billy Graham in the 50s in the States, doing discipleship and follow-up work, had a massive, and continues to have a massive global impact. I think with this like rugged DNA of like obsessed with one-to-one discipleship, and I think it is for being quite so like it resists programmatization because it's necessarily like idiosyncratic and personalist, and I find that deeply attractive. I perpetually meet people who've been infected with the navigator form of things, having a kind of an independence of thought, a sense of call, like a kind of a personalism that avoids categorization and or programmatization, and for that reason it is also quite chaotic. Not necessarily to say that kind of pejoratively. It's quite hard to pin down, and then it's quite hard to sort of cajole the sprawling kittens into a this is what we are and this is what we aren't. But I think it's a huge strength, and I think it drew Tony to it, and and myself, I think, to a sense of the personal. Anyway, he bought the house when he had the means to do so in the 80s, and I think he had a sense of the house being something beyond it. That I think he was not an over-theorizer. He did not write a great theory of community house. It was like the most practical means to the ends of discipleship and evangelism. And I think other houses that have that like very fixed, quite narrow sense of purpose, whether it's I don't know, working with the disabled, or like in the like sense of YWAM or something, like it's quite like this is the program, this is what we're doing, and then in order to achieve that, we've got to work out a food rota, we've got to work out how we do ownership and rhythms and like rotas, but it manages somehow to never become myopic, because it's kind of got to, whereas I think, and I have been guilty of this, of like, I've read Shane Claiborne, I've read the books, I've read the stuff, and now I'm going to community about community, and I think it has a pragmatism which like has its downsides, and I'm sure hot-headed, single-minded, one-dimensional things will lend itself to another set of problematics, but I think what we inherit in this house is something that is the fruit of things being bent towards a purpose, and so it's tuned towards that. So decisions made about having kitchens, having hospitality space, all of that. I think also then he did it for 30 years. So he did it in the 80s, and
he was basically a living landlord, or was he part of the part of the community? Was the whole house eating together? Because it's a house of what? Like
yeah,
10,
so
12?
it was 12 men, and he was one of them. 6 bedrooms, 2 guys in each room, doing life together, and he ran it more like a ship. Yeah, and then I came in 2009, and I met him at church, and like my own meandering story was having been studying architecture at Nottingham, dropped out of that in a, I don't know, not quite sure how faith, architecture, things fit together. Maybe it's another story, but I ended up then at L'Abri because I like that came into my life, and there kind of reintegrating a sense of work and the world and the cabbages and spirituality.
And for people who don't know, L'Abri being another Christian community with an emphasis on being a space for open questions about faith. Would that be a fair way to describe them? Or?
Yeah.
I haven't actually been, so...
L'Abri, so it was English L'Abri. They seek to be a place for honest answers to honest questions. There is a host community and a student community. They operate on a rhythm of terms through the year. And I guess in English L'Abri there's about 30 students, and then a host of kind of 5 families that are there all year round. It is from the Schaeffers, again, in the 50s, in Switzerland, and then the one in the UK in the 70s. But they want to be a demonstration of God. It's a study place. It's a kind of retreat. They don't run programs. You come with your question. It is on the model of things. It's a therapeutic space. You pay to be there, but that doesn't cover the full cost of it. It is out of the city. Everyone is there full time. It's not a place where you go out to work from. So it is it's a therapeutic community. I was there. I derived great benefit from various things, amongst which is living slowly in a place with others, and maybe the self-selecting the people that joins. But I think there's also something profound, that it's the enabling environment for. And then I came away from that with a sense that it is not impossible to integrate these various things. And I think, I mean, if you go to L'Abri, and anyone who spent a term at L'Abri, the last few weeks of L'Abri are like, well, how can we do L'Abri at home? And well, you got to start with. I think it's very difficult to translate the therapeutic into the ordinary, and the subsidised into the non-subsidised, and the full-time into the part-time. And I think it's almost, you have to put it in a category of its own. And there's learnings that you can take, but people that, I don't know, we can eat together every night, and it just doesn't work in the quote-unquote real world. But we're trying. I think of my own influences in terms of, and this, anyway, my prayer was to meet a house of men who prayed together, and bafflingly, of all of the, like, I don't know, it does feel like the most explicitly answered prayer that I found. Anyway, so I met Tony, and Tony was in his 70s, and it was remarkable to see someone live sacrificially, like, complicated guy. Like, I think I mean, people that commit to stay in London is one thing. People that commit to, like, live a quite a, I don't know, solitary isn't really the word, because he was very buttressed. It felt like there was a lot of, like, Bible study stuff and extended community that felt like it was very stable. But yeah, thinking of him emblematically as an example of, like, how I would grow old, not having had anything like that kind of surface area with my own grandparents. Like, it was the deepest and widest, like, experience of intergenerational community, and it felt worlds apart from the other architecture students and other people in my world that had, just by the sort of stratified demographic that you cannot escape, such a microcosmic sense of generationality and stuff. So it was a huge privilege.
And amongst the 12 men, there was, like, a breadth of ages?
Yes, yeah, but not huge. I think.
So mostly younger men, and then Tony?
And Tony, yeah. So, and because London leans young. People looking to live in community houses lean even younger. Like, I think it was always more kind of master's students, international students, 20s into 30s, and that's how it's been now. Like, we've had a spread of ages, but I think it's hard. I think, I guess this model is more taking your lodgers and anchoring. Like, I think what we're stewarding here is a facility, like a home which doesn't pretend to be a flat structure or a complex intergenerational voting structure. It probably is the family unit of Phil and Sarah, carrying, enabling, facilitating a trellis for these other things to come through, to borrow that permanence. And I think when I came 2009 to live with Tony, I then dotted off to Singapore and but had this like 0 to 100, like, no learning curve, just instantly borrow a bunch of relational capital, stability, council tax paid, like, rent is secure, there's dinner every night. Like, you just buy back unbelievable amounts of time by just. And I want to impress on people who are thinking, how do I want to be in my 70s? And impress on people who are stewarding houses with a facility to, like, host people, that actually you can de-risk it, and the compound benefits are massive. And I experienced them from Tony, and I'm in limited and, like, labrie, augmented ways, seeking to kind of steward something that's replicable, hopefully.
Yeah, because so Tony, lived here and he managed the house as a community, eating together and that kind of stuff. And then he passed away.
So I lived here for 4 years with him, and as he was developing Alzheimer's, increasingly we served as his support. And but then I got married and moved out and lived nearby, and then he reached a point where, I don't know, like you can't. He lived in formidably extended independence on account of this like informal and kind of loyal and charming and very humane support structure that sort of emerged around him. But at some point it kind of needs to be locked. Like you need he would get lost and stuff. So he needed a more organised form of care. And so, this powers of attorney, we're looking at the most likely way to pay for that would be to sell the house. And I think that very straightforwardly wasn't necessary. But for someone with their headspace and gift to sort of take on the steering of it. So, I don't know, I pitched to them that it probably wasn't us that was going to run Tony's house as Tony has run it, but there was an openness to us running something changed, in that it would be a family and we would have a guest room. There'd be women in the house. Like it would be there'd be a bunch of changes, and I think also it had kind of faded in certain ways of like it was a model that relied quite a lot on Tony's vitality or his particular kind of decision-making thing to decide to make investment in things, and as that had faded, like some of the plumbing needed some bits of like it was a tricky house that it wanted some inward investment to sort of bring it back up to smooth running. And I think, I don't know, I was enthusiastic for that. I was also very well supported, so it was a good... So anyway, they let us have it, to run it, to pay for his cost of care, which we did, and we sort of grew out the population of the house and have done that, the last 7 years. He has since passed away and has left it to the navigators, for whom we now are, I guess we're still working out quite what the business model is or what the metric of success is, but I think the status quo seems stable as a metric of success, and I think it provides a very rich platform for hospitality, or kind of very, very small to medium scale, but like activated domestic forms of doing life. I'm very reluctant to call it a Christian community. I'd be very reluctant to call it a ministry, as much as I would like everyone to be Christians and live in community and consider their life as a form of service for others. I think because it's now an institution, if you start making it a capital letter ministry, my fear is that it alienates the other 99% of people who have equal potential to steward home. I think if we take off the table of the potential for active good homes, because the only homes that cross the line into ministry are these like special things, I feel like it's a bit of an own goal, or like it feels like the work we do to try to basically say this is ordinary people who have ordinary jobs, who have decided to like use their homes as not merely dormitories, which feel like all of modernity and all of the zeitgeist and all of the kind of egregore of commuting to a place and returning to a kind of retreat from real life. with you, your one person, one dog, and one washing machine is what we try to push back against, and I feel like that is the ministry, as it were, like is demonstrating the ordinary, and I think it's difficult. I don't know.
But such spaces are really important witnesses, I think, and I think such spaces are very enabling spaces in terms of, well, you mentioned just the support, the relational aspect, the communal aspect, like the food, also like the people that you have around and like what that means. So like yesterday, people who were just kind of friends of the house and who come here, and there's what we like, there's well-defined ministry projects, but like not to underestimate what God can do in spaces. So I think such spaces are really important, and for people to realise that you can work full time and be in community. And so I really appreciated being here, witnessing, like full time work community. That is my experience of community as well, as being in community whilst working, and understanding like people are doing their thing in the working world, but can also come back to like really meaningful fellowship. And
it's difficult because we don't draw a salary, we're not actively subsidised, but we kind of do have a free house. Like, this is a plot of land on which the year of Jubilee has been declared, essentially. There's no debt leveraged on it, and so with that great opportunity, there is a responsibility to steward it. So on the one hand, I'm like, we are kind of subsidised, so what's a good stewardship of that? And then on the other hand, I don't for a moment want to say that I have L'Abri being the kind of the preeminent example, derived immense healing from a place that is sort of special, it's set apart, it's subsidised, it's not replicable, it is a ministry, and would that there were 10x more L'Abris in the world that I think would like enabling whatever you call them, I don't know, like those sort of cathedrals that then those resourcing, I think there does need to be a 1 in 10,000 kind of places of exception that you can go to find kind of intensive therapeutic retreat. But for the other 10,000, we all need to live in a home, and I think, I don't know, it's the city and its modernity that wins if we sort of take those off the table of universal ministry by universal ministers. Is a low-key theory.
Yeah. And would you mind describing your life here as a community in terms of meals or meetings, cleaning, those kinds of things?
Yeah. So, the rhythm of life. There's 10 of us, and I guess the things that we have put into the life here that I think make it a functional commitment are Monday nights, which is, I guess there's cooking. So 2 people cook every week, 10 of us, every 5 weeks, 2 of you cook, and they are responsible for all of the food in the house. So we have relatively austere staple basics, which are the grounding of your cereal, your bread, your butter, etc. And then there's a set of evening meals, which are more bespoke, that they will cook, that are more expansible, including a Sunday lunch, a takeaway on the Saturday, and then leftovers on Monday night, which you're about to experience. So that food happens, and I guess there's an economic dimension to that, because it all comes out of a common pot, and that leads to a certain time commitment to doing that. So then Monday nights, I think, is the time where we plan events. We'll have dinner, we'll have a house meeting, we'll do the chores, and I think 1 night a week is essential, and it's non-negotiable, and it can only be 1 night, and it has to be that 1 night. So if you do something else on Monday nights, you can't join this house. And that would be the clearing of the slate, generally co-attending to guests for the week, planning stuff, and then once a month we found it useful to do house days. So cooking for the week, house night, and a house day are probably the rhythms. And I think cooking, I think you need to, yeah, it was interesting, the conversations previously about what's the magic number, and I would love to see someone write a thesis on this and like where you tip over thresholds. But I think at 10, like basically I cook 2 meals a month and I'm fed like a king every night. And we do it for 20 to 30 pounds a head per week, all in. I mean, I could. It's unnerving the degree of generosity that we're able to sort of give by quite a low waste, quite a first principles, quite a. So I think food probably is a good grounding in that it gives everyone responsibility, it celebrates everyone's creativity, and it's always outward focused. So that food is a basic.
And you eat together every evening as a community?
There is a meal every night,
Yeah.
and as many people who are in will eat it. So if you're cooking, you're in. And I think the chalk wall, which every community house must have, doesn't translate to a podcast, but there is a grid where people will declare they're in, or how many guests, or whether they want to come back late, etc. Yeah, and that, I guess, yeah, communication is important. Where am I going with this? I think amongst the things, trying to essentially create this bedrock layer of obligation, which is not spiritual, quote unquote, as it were. And I think you can get this belonging and total buy-in from people that do not have to share a conviction about, like, they're here for the house, and then they're able to engage the spiritual convictions from that baseline. So in many ways, I think Monday nights are deeply spiritual, or like there's a place of coming vulnerably, there's a place of sharing in the highs and lows of the week, and I think I think I would try hard to not create the perverse incentives of spiritual presentationism in exchange for subsidized rent. But again, other models do apply, but this particular one, I think, and the one that we're currently running, I think, is one in which that which grace has afforded rather than a sort of common law. There's something in which there's an equality of access to doing something on the basis of humanity, and then something in which I think it behoves the Christians who live here to then be free to conduct their Christianity in a way that they are free to be on a journey, they're free to be at different places on an inquiry, and they know that is safe. It is different from the Brie in that all 10 of us are members, so I don't know, different models. This may or may not be the most optimum model, but
I don't think it's necessarily about optimum.
Yes, no.
It's not all about optimization. What was I going to say? Yeah, are people aware of? Well, actually, no. First question is: so you and Sarah manage the house, which means you look after like the tenancies and finding new people, and like if something breaks, how does that work?
This I hope is a relatively simple diagram, although it is a little bit messy. Tony owns the house, and when he ran it, it was all in. He ran it as his own little business, and the fabric of the house, the bills of the house, he had his kind of house account, and that it all went into that and all came out of that. As then when we ran it for Tony, we we would run, like that kept running, and essentially we paid to that, and I ran expenses and then just reimbursed expenses from that. And we also came with a whole household of stuff to refresh a lot of quite worn stuff. And so our arrangement with his estate was we would strip the house basically of his kind of worn out stuff, bring fresh beds, fresh crockery and stuff, and basically merge anything that was his estate, like the white goods and various permanent hard standing, and then there was a kind of outline, and then we plugged into that, and it's Phil and Sarah's household, as if taking an unfurnished let. And from that point, we lived as we did in the flat beforehand, try to sort of steward a generosity of fabric kind of emphatically for hospitality, and that's how it's continued to be. And I think the wear and tear that we probably cover for doing that is negligible compared to the market saving that we have for the privilege of living in this place. So at some point we've just like it's not worth the headspace and the bandwidth of sort of trying to calculate the depreciation on a mattress over the course of years. Like, we're living the dream, and so but I think that probably should be thought about. But now as it stands, the house is owned by the Navigators, and they own the hard standing, and they are the hardware, and we keep running the software. And there's an account that we run for the food, the events, and the kind of the software running costs. But the hard standing is theirs. So if there's a hole in the roof, they will fix it. They've partnered with Mission Housing, where Mission Housing have a level of expertise and a London network so they are functionally a letting agent. So they will do certain legalities like right to rent checks and the Home Office's outsourced hostile environment policies that make it difficult to rent to such and such. It's been a formidable help that Mission Housing have kind of got an expertise in that. So then there's a kind of 3-tiered thing where we're still, so Phil and Sarah manage, facilitate and kind of curate the community. And I think that I would commend that model to other people who have a hard standing, to find people who can model the running of an extended household and taking responsibility for it, etc. So we will recruit people, and they will. So people, we have never needed to advertise, but then again, there is. I don't know. I think we're again in a luxurious position there, but we do have there's sufficient inward pressure. The price is sufficiently low, and other factors, but at some level we are the filtration, and we make it visible to people who are interested. But yes.
And do you interview people? Is there a sense in which expectations are laid about? There's a meal every week, Monday's compulsory, we have meetings about
Yeah. So I spend quite a bit of time discouraging people from joining, trying to dispossess them of rosy-tinted, glowing notions of everything is going to be wonderful living in a beautiful community. But yeah, I mean, probably people make speculative inquiries several times a month. They're like, oh, is there a place? And so there's so much resource in the house of if you want to come and stay in the guest room or come and do co-working or come to a house day or something, but we literally only have 10 spaces and people seem to stay here for about 2 years. So there's really whatever calculation there's 2 places come up per year or whatever. It's quite and that I think is for the largest part good. I don't know how you manage exit policies. We haven't it's worked well organically, but I'd say generally, we have recruited. So people make an inquiry. They'll talk to us. We'll lay out what the expectation is at that minimum level, and then invite them. So there's a sort of relational covenant of like, you're going to do this, you're going to cook these times, etc. And then there's like a blank page of write your own relational covenant. And I think this is another thing that I think it's hard to grasp, partly about like what we're trying to do here, which has an ambiguity, or at least it has a multivalence, or is a multifaceted, or like it's different things to different people. And the kind of analogies I would use are, there are some communities which are therapeutic, and like even more so like alcoholics, recovery houses and that sort of thing. The means of access are clear. The A to B, like what does success look like, is really clear, and everyone who's in the house is on the same pathway to do that. The other type of house, which would be like hacker houses, so I know Mim Skinner went to Newspeak House, and Newspeak House is really interesting. They're a similar scale to this, and there's a lot of like, I've spent quite a bit of time on the fringes of what they're doing. I think they could teach a lot about how things are done. Anyway, but there it's a hothouse for a particular kind of goal-oriented like focus. And I guess YWAM kind of having a project, and then you're going to do your DTS and then you're going to go abroad, and like you're all there, you're all 18 and a half, and you're all kind of, there's quite a narrow focus to it. And so again, kind of success looks like that. And L'Abri is a little bit more kind of carrying people in crisis, but also kind of allowing, I mean, there are people who are like, I'm going to go to the place of Francis Schaeffer to receive the apologetics source code. And I think it was really great being at L'Abri and having some of those sort of like theology nerds kind of stirring things up a bit. And so there was this kind of meeting of kind of people who are in crisis and people who don't actually know they're in crisis yet, kind of thing. And so maybe it's a bit of that, but like I think we're not doing the deep end of either of those. We are people trying to do ordinary life. And so then giving people a blank page to say, where are you at A and where is B and how do you get from A to B? And then pitch, why should we have you in the house? But like, what, like, is this a suitable season? Have you grasped? Typically, by the time people come to like actually applying, like, we don't say no to them, because like there've been a couple of people who've so totally misapprehended what the house is. I've sort of had to say, I don't know, like it feels like you're going to really struggle to feel like you're able to support, and then like what that becomes is, this is how you support me to get from A to B. I want to start a business, I'm here, I want to get to there, or I want to recover from this experience or these things, I want to get from here to get to there. And that's then shared to the house in the recruitment process, and then that's then something we refresh each year, and we all have it as like, this is my relational covenant. What it looks like for me is to get from where I am, and that's how. And if you haven't got the time in your week because you're working a like 80-hour job in the city, or if you can't do that because it's just too much or whatever, then there are like other houses are available basically. And I think there's an expectation that you're here to join a group of people who don't all go to the same church, who don't all go to church, who don't necessarily share the same doctrinal convictions, but they are committed to those 9 people. And to facilitate the commitment to those 9 people, we have these bits of equipment, like eating together, meeting once a week, and kind of having these house days. I could have said more about the house days. The house days we found, I'll say more about the house days. Yes. More about the house days while I'm on it. The house days we stumbled into. So when we came to the house, it hadn't been painted for a while. And so we had these like painting and pizza parties, and like people want to do it. This is something like I want to tell other people, like, oh, maybe I could dip my toe into this. I'm like, people, like, I don't know, maybe it's like a London thing when you're in your 20s, but like, I learned a lot from working with Space Max in Wandsworth and like other friends at that time who were doing like just going like mustering a load of volunteers to do a thing. And the Good Gym does it. And like there's other things that have like worked out, that like the crisis of loneliness, and people like just put a flag up and like provide food, and like they'll decorate your house for you. Like they'll do it. Like you have to have a level of like being satisfied with like imperfection, but like painting is very gratifying because you all go away and like, it was that and now it's this. So I absorbed that from other kind of ad hoc things in London, and like, let's do that. And we did that for a series of months, and turned like that did bring people in, get a lot of buy-in, get that sort of thing. And then as that rolled on, there's other like garden days, and that became a thing that like, let us formalize that as a monthly thing, because it plugs in people to a place where I think loads of people live in tiny places, they don't have a garden, they don't have these things, and giving some sort of bus timetable ordinariness of like, oh, there's a mode of access that they can have. Since then, we've kind of alternated them from internal days to external days. So we'll do a day where, I don't know, we'll do an Enneagram workshop or something as a house, and like that'll be something that we'll look at together and like block off the world. And then there'll be days like, and that would also, we do a deep clean. So we'll do a kind of cleaning the bits of the house that we don't otherwise clean. And then there'll be external days. So feast days like a kind of planting the garden day, or the last few years we've done a film day, which is straight up copied from Labrie, or we'll watch 5 films on a theme through a Saturday, and then have a sort of intentional conversation. And like, it's I don't want, like, I don't know, it feels to me like it's easy to do, and maybe that's my gift or my bent, and certainly we have the facility for it. But I think there's lots of other houses which have that and just need certain layers of social buy-in, or maybe you grow towards it, but actually, particularly these sorts of older houses that have this like capacious, underutilized, they assume like this was a working household, like just a lot more industry happened in the 19th and 18th and previous centuries at home, and a lot more complex relationality, and servants and elderlies and stuff were all in it. That actually, I don't know, it just feels like it doesn't feel like we really need to fight against the grain of this house to make it work for forms of parish scale like conviviality. So that's what house days are. And that is something that different housemates can curate as people have a vision to do a day on a theme that's either outward focused or inward focused.
How does normal cleaning work? Because it is a big house.
Yeah, 10 of us for an hour on a Monday night.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, again, I think one of the things that Labrie does really well is kind of gamify, like, you know, like there's enough people there that there's more people there than there is work to be done. So some of the stuff is a little bit like, we polished the banister last week, like, but you do it with people, and then you'll get, like, I think the most commonly occurring life crisis of people coming to Labrie is having been stuck inside their head, stuck inside the academy, and like have become dissociated from physical existence and from relational existence, and merely providing the most vanilla form of just engagement with the physical world alongside and joint attending. And I think just providing forms of, like, cleaning is really good. It's like I don't know, people go to the gym and stuff. Like, you go to do a thing, like it's a physical exercise for an hour, and you do it alongside, and there's forms of communication that are much easier done side to side than face to face. So again, it's ninja spirituality. I my hope, and I don't know, it's really for someone else to tell the testimony. I hate cleaning. Phil's got this method and it doesn't work at all. But I find it cathartic and productive. And so there'll be 2 or 3 people on bathrooms, someone on hoovering, the people on cooking will prep the kitchens for the week, someone's on laundry for the week, and that does like the linen and the tea towels and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think, I don't know, gamify makes it a bit trite, but there's definitely a like seeking to find things that modernity has told us we need to outsource or are an inconvenience or are somehow unclean to the like shouldn't you be doing more elevated things like than mere domestic stuff, but like trying to re-sacralize or re-engage people's sense that the home. The home is this very, I don't know, I'm not sure what the word is. There's something there.
Yeah. And in terms of rent, because previously the rent was going to Tony and then the rent went to supporting Tony's care, and now the house technically belongs to Navigate. So is there a sense in which people pay rent and it goes to Navigate, or the rent? Yeah.
Basically. And it's, in the case of Tony, I wrote the business model and I said, we're going to have to, because he had the rent at a certain level and it was like, there was a gap between what was coming in and what was going out in terms of then. So we said, well, look, we'll gradiate it up over a course of months. And then here's the break-even point. Here's what we anticipate repairs costing. And like, give us 6 months grace and it's going to be breaking even at this point. Like it's a slightly dynamic but not very complex spreadsheet of that. And that's what we've kind of run on. That is now no longer my responsibility. So there's a chunk of the money that goes to a pot that I do manage. So I keep an eye roughly on, I don't know, the food and the Wi-Fi. So certain things which we own, but otherwise utilities and rent goes to the Navigators. And in this last year or two that they've owned it, they've done some really significant capital works, like they've put solar panels on the roof and stuff. I think they are good. They're good and thoughtful landlords who are invested in stewarding this as not merely some arbitrary financial asset, but I think they have a sense that there's an opportunity for the utility value of it and the demonstration value of it. So I guess the money goes somewhat into a black box, but manifestly it's being reinvested. And I don't really have I don't really have the headspace for it. So it's a blessing that they have at least some shape of vision, which I think is medium to long term. And again, I guess trying to commend this as a model, I think I learnt. I think there must be lots of other Tonys out there, or there must be lots of there's lots of other houses just on this street that have been the prudent Christian thing to do is steward it as a fungible asset, as a sort of then to help with the down payment for your children. But that could be sitting on an empty nest for 20, 30 years, right? And so there's a sort of fabric maintenance point, and then the vitality of it's more joyful to allow it to be inhabited in complex relational ways.
And how did you find it? Because it's something I think about in terms of community is the kind of care of the elderly component. How did you find it? Yeah, supporting Tony through kind of his elderly days, and as a 10 of you, right, rather than just one or two.
I was with him as he was fading and forgetting names and not really able to manage stuff, in terms of some of the admin. But it was others who lived in the house as he became more incapable. And even then, because then after he went to a nursing home, seeing I don't really think I have a testimony of doing proper care of the vulnerable. I think he was, so I don't know. So I could romanticize it. I think it would be more difficult. I think it was there were 10 guys who did help with a lot of the practical stuff at a level of low vulnerability, and he then had third parties who kept it accountable, which I think was also important. But it stopped short of being really physical care or really full time. So people, I think the house achieved a level of low-key, ordinary sustaining of him that would be impossible for one or two people, and he wouldn't have been able to live independently. But what does it look like to go full like the full life cycle, it feels like it. This
Even if
model
it's
isn't-
extending semi-independence, that's already quite something. So someone who I call him my extended granddad, but he passed away 2 days ago, but he could have essentially, I think there was a point where it was the isolation which was essentially driving him downhill. And so there's a sense in which, yeah, there must be people who are elderly and in homes alone. But yeah, there are complexities to that in terms of it's a time where people are changing quite drastically, potentially, in the space of 5-10 years.
I think so. There was a thread I was on, which is to do with the model of having a third party, and I think that's been interesting when that's been a personal estate, and it's been interesting when it's been a charity. And I guess
Yeah, you've seen both.
having that accountability. Yeah, one of the great puzzles is because I'd love to set up more houses like this, or like I'd love to facilitate or in some way consult or seed or use some kind of critical mass or like the sort of just, I don't know, risk spreading of just having more of them, because it seems like it's a more joyful way and a more like integrated way to sustain the fabric of houses, to look after the semi-elderly, like, and I think to energize, like to release 10 Londoners in their 20s and 30s to like jumpstart loving the city just more effectively. Love there to be more of them. And I think the like leaving it to individuals to say, I'll club together with some people, we'll rent a place, we'll like, there's just so many intermediate steps of setting something up, and then to then bind them to some third party accountability feels like a kind of an added layer of complexity. But I think I don't know, I found that we developed Tony's estate, the house, this quite strong kind of trust and accountability that I think gave us freedom to make executive decisions, made the house quite efficient, and delivered a return for his estate in quite a virtuous triangle. And I think, although there's more layers to it with the charity, I think that setup is one I wonder, for people who have a house, maybe they have their family estate and they would be looking to maybe integrate like an inputted community as we were. But how you scale or franchise or model or pattern book or what it is that's the translatable ingredient, I don't know. But
It doesn't have to be. I think what I've learned so far is that communities just evolve. Especially when you add God back into the picture as well. And so maybe for non-Christian community there is an intention to franchise, but I think the Christian communities which have spread, as it were, is kind of, yeah, by their fruits they shall be known, and have naturally seeded. So for me there's like less concern there maybe.
True.
Yeah.
My predilection to stoically do things in my own strength is my undoing.
I think we're approaching 6:30, but just wanted to ask, as you know, the podcast is Dwelling Place, and even though this isn't necessarily like an explicitly Christian community, but you are Christian, and like, has this house been significant of any way to your faith?
I think, yeah. I think so. I think one of the most precious gifts of the time in the house has been the formational influence of those people who've been least like me, who've maybe been like low in agreeability and high in whatever it is, like people who've truth-in-truthed. I think I've been brought to a sharp awareness of my shape, particularly where it has cut people, or particularly where it has where it has not been non-compatible, and I think that has led to a severity of truth, which I think I could blithely go on in ignorance, but for that. And I think, yeah, a whole list of very gracious people who've patiently like borne with that. And I think a lot of, yeah, I think I'm capable of like quite an aloof tone, or like quite a complexity of thought, and I think there's particular aspects of that which are sound like they help community, but actually they have a sort of elitist, alienating like effect. And so I don't know. I think God has dwelt a lot in conflict, as it were, like of like holy truth in truth. That I think I don't know. Feeling like there's been that. And then yeah, yeah, living with Tony. I don't know, looking to find ways to find more people of that generation. But I think that yeah, I think yeah, he was a complex person, but he sacrificed a lot, and I think he gave himself away in a way that I'm still not there. And yeah, so I don't know if that's, but yeah, God dwelling in, yeah, the radical candor.
Oh, thank you so much, Phil.